With House of the Dragon Season 2 dropping in a couple of hours and the debate once again dividing the internet along the lines of Team Black and Team Green, I figured I should drop this video to remind you all that the real villain of the story is not Otto Hightower, or Alicent, or Aegon, or Daemon, or Rhaenyra. The true villain of House of the Dragon is Duty. And that bitch is rated E for every single character in this story. Over the next 20 to 25 minutes, I will be highlighting how Duty influences each of the major players in the fatal Dance of the Dragons, and how a bitch ass is responsible for the absolute utter devastation and wreckage of the lives of these characters. And if you stay to the end of this video, I will tell you what team I'm in, if you haven't already guessed it, of course. Deal? Okay, let's get started with the video. When people think of the word duty as it pertains to House of the Dragon, the image or the clip that pops into their head is often of Alicent Hightower wielding Viserys' cat's-paw Valyrian steel dagger, holding it inches away from Rhaenyra's face as she asks her through gritted teeth, where is duty? Where is sacrifice? And so often when people think of duty in House of the Dragon, they think it only pertains to Alicent, unaware that each of the players in this game are driven, propelled by duty in different ways, and this duty that drives them is what serves as a major motive behind their actions, serves as an impetus to the decisions they take, and is what ultimately leads to their ruin. What do I mean? Let's start with the man that is often considered the villain of the series, Otto Hightower, Hand of the King, father to Alicent Hightower, grandfather to Aegon Targaryen, Aemond Targaryen, Rhaenyra Targaryen, and although we all assumed that the show forgot about his existence or had written him out completely, but we now have confirmation that he's definitely in world, Daemon Targaryen. Usually when people talk about Otto, they use words like scheming, self-serving, manipulative. He did send his young daughter to a grieving king after all, playing his cards right so the king would choose his daughter as his second wife, and Viserys does. But a lot of people never really see Otto as dutiful, and I think it does his character a disservice. It does all the characters I'm going to mention in this video actually a disservice, really, because Otto is dutiful and responds appropriately to his duty in the story. What is that duty, you wonder? Simple. It is Sir Otto Hightower's duty as a second son to secure his family and his line, to keep his branch of the family from falling into obscurity or ruin. Wise is the second son who realizes that because he doesn't have the prominence of the firstborn son and heir, he would have to make his own way. That is Sir Otto Hightower's duty, because it's not uncommon for second sons in Westeros to have the entire branch of their family fall into poverty and ruin. Podrick Payne is an example. So Otto took his duty to better his lot and cement his position as his responsibility to his family very seriously. Do I approve of the means with which he achieves this? Hell no. But like I always say in this analysis videos, having an understanding of the context of the world in which these characters exist and the role they have to play helps us better understand where they are coming from and why they are driven to take the decisions they do. In this case, Otto realizes that Emma's death is an opportunity that was granted him, and he took it as duty demands. His duty wasn't concerned with the morality of his actions. Alicent was basically a child. But if you want to judge Otto for how young she was, I would like to point out that Collis offered up Rhaenyra, who was 5-6 years younger than Alicent at that point, to Viserys as his bride-to-be. And Collis also did it for the same reason that Otto did, to secure his position and to further his ambition. But Otto wanted it more. His duty demanded that he fight harder for it, scheme better for it, which is why by the time it occurred to the other lords to start putting their names forward, Otto was already miles ahead. The same can be said for Vaemond, who like Otto is also a second son, and whose duty is to protect his family and secure their line. And then there's Viserys' duty as king of the realm. Duty demands that he not waste away mourning the loss of his wife and should instead remarry. Duty demands that he sire more children and heirs. Duty demands that he choose from one of the more prominent houses to make the match. Duty demands that he makes the absolute best match, and thus duty punishes him for not doing so. Because the best possible match of what he had been given at that point was Rhaenyra Velaryon. If he was to perform his duty as expected of him, he should have married her. Child though she may have been, it would have waited a couple of years for her to come of age, given Rhaenyra more time to secure her claim to the throne. But then the tricky thing about duty is, even if he had chosen Rhaenyra Velaryon, there is no way of being absolutely certain that events wouldn't still have played out the same way he did. What if Rhaenyra had given him a son? Would Corlys, who at this moment was still fighting for the birthright his wife was cheated of, would Corlys have been satisfied with his grandson not sitting on the Iron Throne? Would he have acted different from Otto? Because both of them have always had their duty to their house and their family. Corlys might have reacted the very same way as Otto Hightower. He is the one, after all, that had Viserys walk all the way to his throne room at Driftmark as a show of strength and power. His ambition is no less greater than Otto, nor is his sense of duty. Then there's the queen herself, Alicent Hightower. I find it very interesting how a large part of the fandom truly hates her, and honestly, there are some scenes when I want to reach in through the screen and shake her hard. But at the same time, I do feel pity for her, because Alicent is one of the most dutiful of them all. She recognizes her duty to her father to follow his instructions as it pertains to their house, because she recognizes Otto's duty to establish and secure their house and line. She recognizes and follows her duty as a wife, pushing out babies after babies, being poured at by a man old enough to be her father. She doesn't love him. She gets no pleasure from their coupling. From the scene we've been able to see of her, she disassociates during sex with him. It is marital rape. But she does her duty as a wife and births his heirs, numerous ones. All the sons that he wanted from Aemma and didn't get, Alicent gave them to him in triplicate. Remember, we have Daemon confirmed. She does her duty as a mother, trying to love and protect her children. And before you say that Rhaenyra was the more protective and loving mother, you would be right. But Alicent Hightower was not working under the same conditions as Rhaenyra was. She didn't have a loving husband or partner. Rhaenyra had 3. Laenor, sure, he might not have fathered those boys, but he loved them. And he loved Rhaenyra as well in his own way, as much as he could as a gay man, of course. Then there's Sir Arwyn Strong, and then there's Daemon. Rhaenyra had supportive partners, and there's just something about the abundance of love in her life that meant it's easier for her to care for her kids. Alicent didn't have the same. Viserys failed in his duty as a father to his other children with Alicent, if we're being honest. He stuck his head in the sand, loved Rhaenyra above all else, didn't spare his other children his effort or time or care, and basically turned Alicent into a single mother in Westeros. She did what she could with what she was given, what she thought was her duty. Even the line she parrots back at Aegon are the exact same words her father told her, that Rhaenyra will murder her boys to secure her line and throne. We know that Rhaenyra is pretty decent and most likely wouldn't have. But remember, duty to one's family and house is removing any sort of perceived threat. You don't wait until the threat arrives and destroys your family. You take care of it and you take it out pretty quickly. That is the dutiful thing to do. Alicent also has a duty to her faith. It's what sustained her in her loveless marriage and in what she believes is an unfair world. And I don't think the show tried to hide it. They really put it front and center that Alicent is highly religious, which meant that although I, like the rest of the fandom, am pissed at her interpretation of Viserys' words as it passed on, I realized that even in pushing for her son's succession, she thought she was being dutiful, honoring the last words of her late husband, who kept talking about Aegon's prophecy of his son sitting on the Iron Throne, and honoring the gods who she believes sent the same prophecy to her husband and his family. A major theme in the Song of Ice and Fire books in the world created by George R.R. Martin is the theme of prophecy and how when it is forced to come to pass, it becomes twisted and not in any way what was hoped for or declared. Because a forced prophecy is not a prophecy at all. Viserys was so desperate to be the one directly connected to the prophecy of his forebears that he dooms the lot of them, even at his dying. And Alicent, dutiful Alicent, did what her duty to both her faith, her husband, and her family demanded. She crowned Aegon as king. But what about Rhaenyra's duty? Her duty as a woman and queen is to be beyond reproach. As Rhaenys warns her that the men would rather see the entire world at war than to see a woman sit upon the Iron Throne, and therefore the aspersions cast upon her served as the shield, the foil with which the small council and the people of her realm used as a facade to justify not wanting to honor Viserys' choice of her as heir. And then there's her duty as a wife to cover her husband's shame. Because Laenor Velaryon has a duty as the heir to Driftmark and the next Lord of the Tides, to father his son. And he needs to fulfill this duty through the woman he marries, in this case Rhaenyra, who also has a duty as the heir to the Iron Throne to make sure that she bears even more heirs for the throne, to solidify her position and prevent Westeros from dissolving into anarchy and chaos when she dies and the matter of her successor comes up. She needs a ton of heirs to solidify and keep that from becoming a possible occurrence. Her grandfather and grandmother had 13 children to secure their line, and all of their heirs passed on, leaving the question of succession to their grandchildren, Rhaenys and Viserys. Rhaenyra, like Laenor, had a duty to birth sons for them both, and Laenor could not. And although they tried, like Rhaenyra tells Daemon, they couldn't make it work, and so she had to get her heirs elsewhere. She did her duty as a wife and a queen, but unfortunately, duty, that contrarian bitch, still got in the way, because to fulfill her duty as a wife and queen, she had to forgo her duty as a woman of her time, a duty to be beyond reproach. And duty and the story and its characters punished her for it. Then there's Rhaenyra's duty to her father's wishes, not just his wish that she succeed him, but also the wish that she remember why Aegon the Conqueror came to Westeros and sought to unite the lands against the incoming threat of the others coming from the north. Her duty was to make sure that the House of the Dragon stayed united to serve its purpose, protect the realm for when the danger comes. It is what drives her to try and reclaim her throne, as it is beyond just my father wanted me on that iron throne, it is my birthright. It is driven by duty to see a prophecy fulfilled. Yet another way in which we see similarities between her and Alicent, although the latter might have been misguided on the actual scope of the prophecy and what it means. Rhaenyra's duty is to ensure that the dreams of her forebears doesn't die, and since she was the only one entrusted the secret by Viserys as his one true heir, she understood the stakes, why she needed to be the one on the Iron Throne. But like a lot of characters in the show, although she remembered it at the start, her actions and decisions throughout the course of the story meant that she forgot that duty. Because to protect the realm, you need dragons, you need Targaryens. Do you know what happens in a war? You lose dragons and Targaryens. A lot of them. But what about Daemon Targaryen? What of his duty? You see, the reason why Daemon is able to read Otto Hightower so well is because game recognizes game. As a second son, Daemon is very much aware of the duty of second sons, and so he knows what is driving Otto. He knows what Otto aims to accomplish, and he's very aware that a wise person, a fairly intelligent and competent second son like Otto Hightower, will play his cards the way he should to serve him and his family. And that is why he and Otto are at loggerheads, because Daemon's duty as second son is to protect the interests and standings of his family as well. Of Viserys, of Rhaenyra, of their 7 children, Jace, Luke and Joffrey, Baela and Rhaena, Aegon III and Viserys II. Daemon's duty as a second son, as a brother, as a husband and father is to protect his family from any and all threats. The same way Otto does. It is his duty to strike back when it hurts. When his family is devastated, it falls on him to make that call. So when you watch Blood and Cheese in the next couple of hours, do keep that in mind. And when there is a response to Blood and Cheese, keep that in mind as well. That these characters collectively are driven by their duty and the responses it forces on them. And this is inclusive of Sir Criston Cole, who, like the rest of the fandom, I desperately want beheaded. But as much as I hate his guts, I also have to point out that he too is acting out of a sense of duty. His duty as a member of the King's Guard to protect his honor and virtue. A duty he failed in when he had sex with Rhaenyra. And I know a lot of people work with the whole bit of Rhaenyra was a child. In the story, she wasn't. She had come of age. Now, before you come typing in my comments being all like, Noria, what are you saying? That is disgusting. She's not even 18 yet. I just want you all to remember that times are different. Do not judge these characters with modern sensibilities. It will not serve any of us well. I find it disgusting, but I am also aware that in my country's histories, girls were married off pretty young. What I find reprehensible and believe should not be allowed to stand is when the practice is still being done today. Then I judge it with modern sensibilities. But back in those days, in their time, I recognized that Rhaenyra was just about to turn 18. She had come of age back when she was 15. Viserys tells her, and by extensions us, that he has been fielding marriage requests for years. I think the reason why a lot of watchers don't realize how much older she had gotten is because Millie Alcock played her through all those years. Like, I love Millie, but the show could establish Lena and Laenor aging by using 3 different actors for them. Rhaenyra only got 2, which confuses viewers, but she was of age, not a child, and there was a power imbalance in that relationship. Sir Criston Cole was a member of the King's Guard by virtue of her choosing him. She elevated his position, and one would say she abused her position in seducing him. Like, I love my girl Rhaenyra, but come on, facts are facts. She was his boss. She promoted him from and elevated his family in a way that they could never have envisioned or dreamed, and she was young and hot. And yes, the attraction played a role in him fucking her, but it was also gratitude. And when he realized he had failed in his duty in protecting her virtue, and his, he hoped that she would serve her duty as her woman to regain her honor and his by marrying him. When she didn't, well, hell had no fury like a Sir Criston who got his dick wet and is now paying that he is without honor. I can't believe filming this video just made me attempt to defend Sir Criston Cole. But you get where I'm going with all of this, right? Duty really is at the core of the fucked up things these characters do or are made to do, even Aegon II. Because the only reason why he is on that throne is because of his duty to his mother and grandfather, his duty to his family to protect them from the perceived threat that Rhaenyra might want to harm them in some way, his duty to the small council who believe that he should be and is Viserys' justified heir, and his duty to the people, a lot of who are also of that opinion, as we see from when Daemon takes Rhaenyra into town to watch the shows and performances and get an understanding of what the people think about her and her claim. Aegon II is a fucked up rapist piece of shit, but he does try his best in performing his duty, even though he feels very unequipped for that position or role. Nobody expects anything from him. It's nothing but the duty to which he is meant to serve his family and the realm. And we see that through the show in the first season and most likely in upcoming seasons. Do I think that he is vile? Yes. Once again, I cannot believe that this video is making me attempt to defend Aegon the rapist. Ew. The things I do for you all and for the understanding of a story being told. But like I said, there is no character you can mention from the show who isn't driven by some sort of duty. Even Vaemond Valerian, who some might interpret as being driven by self-interest, but who is also driven by his duty to his house, to the house Valerian, to make sure that it is Valerian blood that sits on the throne of Driftmark. Because if Corlys had listened to Rhaenys and instead named Laena's daughters as heir to Driftmark, Vaemond wouldn't have challenged the succession. Corlys, like he tells Rhaenys, only thinks about the name, a privilege of a firstborn son. Vaemond, as the second-born son, has the duty to protect the family and secure their line. Even the dragons are driven by their duty to fight for and even die for their riders, and their riders in turn have the duty to protect their dragons. A duty that over the course of the story we will see that House Targaryen fails utterly at, except my girl Dany, of course. Let's take a collective breath and hold a moment of silence for the travesty that was the end of Game of Thrones and curse David and Dan for the atrocities they committed. Now back to House of the Dragon. Do I think duty is the only thing driving these characters? No. They are as complex in their stories as they are in their desires. Otto can be both dutiful and ambitious. Often these two traits can serve each other well and blend into the other. It's what happens. The funny thing, however, about duty is that it comes in multiplicities. Your duty to one person and one relationship might be different from your duty to another. That's what makes duty truly villainous, because all these characters are doing their duty. But just as we realize at the end of Dance of the Dragons, which is what we are seeing in its adaptation, House of the Dragon, the most dutiful thing of all is to remember our duty to our family, to stay united, to stand strong. And as we will see in the coming seasons, yes, I say seasons again, because HBO did confirm that House of the Dragon has been renewed for a third season, which, yeah. So as we will see in the coming seasons, the Targaryens, and that is what they all are, Rhaenyra and Daemon, Aegon and Aemond, Alicent, because she's a Targaryen technically by marriage, and Otto, who is the father of someone who married into that house and is a grandfather of many of them. The Targaryens lost sight of their most important duty, family. And duty, who all this while has blinded them to our many facets, pushed them into their many self-interest and misguided belief of what should be the most dutiful and expected thing of them, punishes the entire family for forgetting what their most important duty is. Duty. She really is a fickle bitch, isn't she? And for those who stay to the end, I am team the dragons and the innocent children who suffered in this story. But if I absolutely had to choose a faction, of course I'm team black. Rhaenyra was declared heir to the throne, and no matter what she did, even if she had been Jaehaerys himself returned back to life, in the words of Otto Hightower, they still would have found a way to rob her of her inheritance and birthright, because she is a woman. Even if she had been perfect, if she hadn't had an affair with Harwin, if her children had come out with blonde hair of their Targaryen heritage, because they are still Targaryen, the small council, Otto and his interests would still have found a reason and a way to discredit her. It wasn't that they felt like her honor was questionable because of her lover. What they've always found questionable was Viserys' audacity to keep her as his heir after he had a true-born son. That is the truth. You know it, and I know it too. But yes, if you enjoyed this video or what I had to say, please do not forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you aren't yet, and share this video as well. It all helps to grow my channel and is incredibly supportive of my content. Speaking of support, a huge thank you to my patrons. You all keep me going and help keep the lights on. Thank you. If you would like to support me on Patreon as well, the link is in the description bar. I make new videos 3 times a week. Mondays are for anime, manga. Wednesdays are for my movies and TV show content. Fridays are what I call my Noria can upload whatever she wants days. This can be additional movie or TV show content, something bookish, something related to video games, anything really. All my videos drop at 5 p.m. EST, so keep that in mind. And until my next video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.